Okay.
Okay. Well, I'll officially call our meeting to order. Remind everybody to the best of your ability, silence your cell phones. And since we're virtual, the little notification that you get when you get emails, we're all busy. We could be getting the ding dongs all throughout the whole next 2 hours. So if you could silence that as well, thank you. And a reminder, this board meeting is being streamed live. I'm calling this meeting to order. I'm Jason Dean, Chairman of the Mississippi Board of Education, present in Madison, Mississippi. This meeting of the Board of Education is being held today, Thursday, February 25th, 2021 at 10 a.m. via teleconference and video means pursuant to Mississippi Code, annotated section 2541.5. Notice of this meeting was posted in accordance with state law and included the date, time, place, and purpose of the meeting and identified the location of the meeting available to the public. An audio recording is being made of this meeting and minutes of the meeting will be recorded. The meeting is also being live streamed. Dr. Carrie Wright is present. Are you in Madison as well, Dr. Wright?
Yes, sir, I am.
Okay, Madison, Mississippi, to participate in this teleconference meeting. As I call the names of the board members, please state the location of your presence for this meeting. Ms. Rosemary Altman.
I'm present in Clinton, Mississippi.
Dr. Angela Bass.
I'm present in Jackson, Mississippi.
Mr. Glenn East.
Present in Gulfport, Mississippi.
Dr. Karen Elam.
Present in Oxford, Mississippi.
Dr. Ronnie McGehee.
Present, Madison, Mississippi.
Mr. Omar Jamil.
Present in Hernando, Mississippi.
Miss Amy Zhang. Amy with us this morning? Okay, I think she's got a presentation later, so we'll see if she'll join later. A quorum of the board is present at the location stated for the purpose of conducting the meeting through teleconference and video means. The February 25th, 2021 board meeting is now called to order at 10:02 a.m. Since this is a teleconference meeting, please identify yourself when asking questions, making comments, or making motions. Please mute yourself at all other times to avoid background noise. I will lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance, and I've asked Dr. Bass to lead us in the invocation. And I've got a flag for us. Please join me as we say the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America
and to the
republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible,
with
liberty
and justice for all. Dr. Bass, will you lead us in the invocation?
Yes, I will. Please take whatever position you're comfortable with. Dear Lord, we thank you for the opportunity today to gather here today. We thank you for this year's successes in areas of growth and give us the strength to continue progressing as a state. Loving and gracious God, you are indeed the giver of all gifts, and we come together this day to seek your wisdom, guidance, courage, and strength. Be with us in our deliberations and help us to be wise in the decisions we make for the children of Mississippi, the teachers, the families and communities, and the good of all those who have placed their trust and confidence in our leadership. Give us insight to lead with integrity, that our decisions may reflect what is right and good. Keep us from short-sightedness. Help us to make decisions that strive to be for the good of all. Finally, dear Lord, grant us the humility to always seek your will in all that we do and say. All glory be to you, loving God, now and forever. Amen.
Amen. Thank you. Okay, you should have a copy of the minutes from our January 21st, 2021 board meeting in front of you. Is there a motion to approve?
I'll make a motion to approve. Ronnie McGehee from Madison.
Motion, and I saw a second from Ms. Altman. Any additional discussion? Hear none. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed or any edits? Okay, motion carries. Minutes are approved. Next, I'll entertain a motion for any additions or deletions to the agenda. Are there any items on the consent agenda that members would like to pull out now for discussion? Okay, seeing none, we need a motion to approve the agenda as presented.
So moved, Karen Elam.
Okay, there was a motion. I think the second was from Mr. East. Any other additional discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Okay, motion carries. So we have our agenda, and Dr. Wright, I'll turn it over to you from the report from the state superintendent.
Hi, thank you. So this has been another busy month. Several speaking engagements. The Aspen Institute pulled together congressional staff and wanted 2 state superintendents to come in and speak to Congress, basically their staffers, around chronic absenteeism and the issues that are related to chronic absenteeism. So I did that on behalf of our state and the work that we've been doing here. We also are convening a multi-state initiative around educator prep programs and the need for some reform work that's done there. This is being led by the Hunt Institute and the Barksdale Reading Institute, and we are one of 6 states that's going to be participating in helping lead this work at the national level. CCSSO held another national summit, and this one was entitled State Actions to Improve Literacy, and I was a keynote speaker there, talking and spreading the good word about the things that have been going so well here in Mississippi with all of our literacy reform. And likewise was invited to a Plain Talk conference. Actually, Dr. Kimiana Burke and I both did a joint presentation. Actually, we did 2 presentations for this conference around our work with literacy. Lots of collaboration has been taking place. Still working with the medical community around telehealth and teletherapy. That's really advancing quite nicely, and that group has really been terrific to work with. And so more to come on that as we start identifying exactly where we're going to be expanding that around the state. Continue to meet with my superintendent's advisory group, get their input on issues that we've been facing. I held my first principals advisory group, and that was really very refreshing. They're very excited about having a voice at the state level, and I'm excited. They're from all over the state, and it was an application process just as we had done before. So I'm really excited to have their participation. And also had a long conference with 2 senators, actually 3 senators from North Carolina, and their state education chair as well. They really want to learn more about our work, and they would love to come and visit. And I invited them to bring a whole team of people, legislators, State Department people, teachers, whoever it is that they want. They're going to come and visit us because they are very excited about the work that we're doing. I've got a statement that I wanted to read to you before I hit recognition, because I just thought it would really touch your heart. I just wish I'm going to have to send this to Dr. Kelly. I'm not going to tell you exactly which student it's from, but I think this speaks volumes about the work that you've done to put student voice on, not only on the state board, but also with my student advisory council, which, as you know, we formed about the same time. And so it says, thanks, and we appreciate you all. However, being a member of the Superintendent's Student Advisory Council for the last 2 years has been an honor and a privilege. It allowed me to interact with a diverse and multicultural group of individuals. This paved the way of interacting through learning, critical thinking, and sharing knowledge and opinions with each other. It has also allowed me to be a liaison between our school district and the Mississippi Department of Education. Thank you for selecting me to be a part of such a distinguished advisory council. Be blessed and be safe. So this is a great group. I know, you just love it. I'm meeting with them tomorrow and actually today, and they have been working offline in a variety of areas, and they have done a presentation that they're going to bring to me about things that they want my input on and actions that they want the State Department to take. So it's really exciting, to be honest. And I'll have to forward it to you after everything is said and done. So you'll see they've really spent a lot of hard time and good thought into this. And I want to recognize one person that's leaving our department, and that's Henry Vaughn. Henry has been working in OTSS. He's been our security person, and needless to say, he's going to be missed. He's done 2 security audits. What he has brought to our team and the department in terms of network security, internet security, etc. He's been with us for more than 3 years, actually. And our security risks have really been identified due to his leadership. And so he is going to be, it's going to be a real loss for us and hard to replace because you had his constant vigilance making sure that our system was secure. He's the one that did all the training, established the training protocols for all of our staff. He also helped pass the Rule 55.1, creating our first K-12 education privacy rule. And also the whole idea around data governance and how we can make sure that our data are secure. So on behalf of the department, and I know I speak for the state board, I just really want to wish him well. He's moving back to Tennessee, and he's just been terrific. So Henry, if you're on and you're listening, thank you so much for everything that you've done and given to us, because we really, really appreciate it. Your shoes are going to be very difficult to fill. And that concludes my report, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you. Great report as usual. So in my report, I have a little bit of news. So effective as of the end of our meeting this morning, maybe this afternoon, this will be my last meeting as a member of the State Board of Education and stepping down as chair and as a member of the Board of Education. It's been an amazing 6 years almost of supporting the work that the department's doing and lending a voice to the process. As I've been telling people, this is not a political statement. I'm not leaving because I'm, upset or, mad at it or anything. I'm just changing jobs. I'll be starting a new profession that, potentially presents some conflict. So I just thought it, better, I'm not a gray guy, it's black or white. And I just thought, it's probably a good time to step away. Definitely want to send some gratitude to the board members. Thank you very much, all of you, for your service. I think we all know maybe we don't know what we're getting into when we sign up, but we at least know that it's a commitment. You sign up for a full term, you're looking at 9 years, and I calculated that from my first meeting of October 2015. That was 108 meetings. So I'm about halfway through, but. Definitely, appreciate, the work that the board members are doing. Omar and Amy, you guys just bring such fresh, thoughts and ideas to the process. And I can't wait to see how you guys grow professionally. Rosemary, thank you to you particularly for, taking on the mantle of leadership yet again and agreeing to serve as chairman. So thank you for that sacrifice. The executive leadership team, Carrie, I mean, you guys, you are all stars. Nathan, Paula, Pete, Joe, Felicia, Washington, y'all are fantastic. And of course, Sonia, who is, our go-to lady. She has been fantastic, available day or night, nights, weekends, holidays, just a fantastic, support team. And of course, Carrie, you've been just an amazing friend to get to know. There's a lot of ways I would describe you: smart, diligent, determined, caring. But probably the one term I would use from this point forward, is I always think back to our time, is just tough, just really tenacious and tough, and go get it, and just a determined lady. And it's been fantastic to work by your side. And then I would say the 40,000 licensed educators out there serving our 465,000 students day in and day out. This last year has been nothing but, a monster. I think nobody would argue that easily the hardest year in education in at least the last 50 years. And so we just, applaud you for the work that you do. We support you. We know that this is, we're at the beginning of yet another challenging time for educators. But while I'm stepping off the board, I hope to be continuing to support the work and the progress that has taken place so far, but it's just beginning, and I look forward to the continued relationship, just in a different way. So with that, I will now turn it over to our student representatives. I believe Amy and Omar, you guys have a report.
Yes. So for the past 2 months, the Student Advisory Council has been meeting with each other and meeting with our directors and concerns to improving virtual learning and traditional learning. I've been discussing a number of student issues with students, both at the regional level, in my own area, the Memphis area, and at a state level. And we have our final Student Advisory Council this afternoon, actually. We will be presenting information and solutions related to internet accessibility, updating technology, motivating the education sector, decreasing disparities between traditional and virtual learning, teacher engagement and hiring, interdistrict online learning, and virtual physiological improvements. And what I've noticed, especially over the past year, is that many of the issues we have discussed at the state level profoundly reflect the conflicts within my own region of learning, as well as the nationwide discourse over social media networks. So it is pretty imperative that we as the Mississippi Student Advisory Council create solutions that will impact not only our state or our region, but the nation as a whole, as setting a precedent for some of these examples of how we could lead and how we can improve student, teacher, administrator learning and the work environment. So I'm really excited for this afternoon where we can get some of those solutions to our administrators, to Dr. Wright, and we can really create solutions for this generation where learning is just as important as ever in the time of the pandemic.
Okay. Is Amy presenting?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
I would also like to talk about the Student Advisory Council. As Omar said, it's been very enlightening, and I think that it's been a great opportunity to connect with students across the state, because even though Omar and I are the student representatives, it's always great to hear perspectives from more people. And so I'd like to give a quick overview of what each of the work groups will be presenting for the board members who can't attend the meeting today, because I think these are some really great ideas. For the ACT and SAT resources and support group, their main problem that they're focusing on is how to improve ACT scores, and their solutions are implementing more ACT prep classes and curriculum. For the improving virtual learning for students group, it's a bit broader. They talk more about struggles with motivation for students, interdistrict online learning, disparities, expanding on Mississippi Connects for more software in the future, beyond just hardware, and communication and connection. For the mental and emotional health resources and support group, they talk about the prevalence of mental illness among youth and how school can serve as a better line of defense besides a student's family. And they talk about mental health counselors, mental health checks and support groups, and incorporating electronics or apps into mental health treatment. For the social justice awareness group, they mainly focus on minority studies, a podcast or newsletter, a social justice week or a social justice club, and opinions on the Patriotic Education Fund in Mississippi. And they're focusing on a wide variety of cultural issues. And for the last group, which is teacher training for improved virtual instruction, they talk about problems such as having teachers who are unfamiliar with technology, disparities between online and in-person learning, how for some teachers, if you teach both in-person and virtual classes, the workload has kind of doubled, and the lack of internet service that some teachers have at home. So in conclusion, the council members are all very passionate and involved, and they bring a lot of great ideas to the table. And they'll obviously be able to explain some of these ideas much better than I can this afternoon. I've learned a lot from it, and I'm very thankful that we've taken the time to organize and listen to these student voices.
Great. Thank you again. As always, very informational and great insight into what our students are dealing with in real time. That's, like I said earlier, just an important voice for the board to hear. Any questions from our board of either Omar or Amy? Okay, hearing none, then we'll move on to the, I don't think we had any subcommittee meetings unless I missed something. So we'll move straight to our 9 here, discussion and approval of board items. The first one is Dr. Vanderford. I'll just read it. Revised Mississippi Code and our standards, specifically the business rules for the accountability model for college and career readiness as it relates to the ACT work keys. Dr. Vanderford.
Good morning. Just as a brief background before I turn it over to Mr. Bureau and Dr. Oakley, for those board members that may not have been in attendance at one of the meetings, or for any member of the public that may not recall the timeline, but in November of 2020, the Accountability Task Force made a recommendation that we include the work keys as a standalone item in the college and career readiness component of the Mississippi Statewide Accountability System. With further conversations with our technical advisory committee, they felt the need to pair that with either a career pathway or an industry certification to increase the rigor of that particular component. We presented that to the Commission on School Accreditation. We had modified the Accountability Task Force recommendation based on the recommendation from our Technical Advisory Committee. And in December, the Commission on School Accreditation unanimously approved, I'm sorry, I did not know that that would go through my computer, unanimously approved the pairing of each of the two in that component. We submitted that to the state board in December to begin the APA process. In January, we brought back to you a number of APA comments that were pretty much split down the middle to keep it as a standalone item versus pairing it with an industry certification and career pathway. And at that time, the board tabled for further discussion because you had some questions that you would like answered, as well as some data additionally to use in considering the item. So today we have a presentation prepared that Mr. Beer will walk through the first portion of that presentation that will be more technical in nature, and then Dr. Oakley will answer the questions that were related to the academic team with the career and technical education programs throughout the state. Mr. Beer.
Okay, now that I'm unmuted, let's see. Can you see the PowerPoint presentation?
Yes.
Okay, great. Thank you. All right, so let me first start with our vision and mission statements. And I do want to touch here on especially our mission statement in regard to what we'll discuss today. But our vision to create a world-class education system that gives students the knowledge and skills to be successful in college and the workforce and to flourish as parents and citizens. And our mission to provide leadership through the development of policy and accountability systems so that all students are prepared to compete in the global community. And I wanted to just touch on a vision, on our mission statement to say that, you know, anytime that we are considering changes to policy, especially in regard to accountability, that we think closely about how that impact may have both intended and unintended consequences in relation to that change, especially since, as we know, accountability tends to drive behavior in schools and districts. Looking at our strategic plan goals, of course, accountability touches on all of these goals, but I think of most relevance today is goal 2. That is that every student graduates from high school and is ready for college and career. And the policies we'll be discussing today will address that in particular. So we're looking at the college and career readiness component of the accountability system. And work key and incorporation of work keys into that component. So I'll touch on that indicator just briefly. Just some background, the Accountability Task Force has been working on this item since March of 2020, as you will likely recall, and working to add work keys as an alternative to ACT in the college and career readiness component. And the MD has reached out and worked with ACT to gather data information regarding the relationship of the work keys assessment to the ACT assessment. So where college and career, let me see if I can maximize this. Where college and career readiness fits into the accountability model is in this chart here, and you can see that college and career readiness is in the gray shaded area in the components for high schools and districts. And looking closely at more closely at college and career readiness, we'll see that the benchmarks on ACT are included as half of the points for college and career readiness go to whether or not a student meets or exceeds the benchmark in English or reading, and the other half of the points go to whether or not the student meets or achieves the benchmark in math. And how that equates out is each student can earn up to 1 point, half of a point for each of those areas in the benchmarks. So this slide will talk about the data that we gathered from ACT. ACT was able to match about 4,000 students from the graduating class of 2019 to their performance on ACT. And so this chart will show the relationship between the achievement of ACT benchmarks and the NCRC certifications that students earned from this group of students. So starting in the left-hand column, you'll see that this is the group of students in that sample population that did not meet any benchmarks on ACT, and whether or not they achieved a silver or higher on the NCRC. For example, in this example, we see 583 students achieved a silver or higher NCRC, but met no ACT benchmarks. The middle column is the group of students who achieved one of the ACT benchmarks, but not the other that we just discussed for the CCR component, and how they performed on work keys. So 899 of those students achieved a silver or higher. And then on the right-hand column, these are the students who achieved both of the benchmarks in the CCR component and how they performed on the NCRC. 948 of those students achieved a silver or higher. What's important to point out in this slide is that the 583 students in the first column and 899 in the second column who achieved a silver or higher on the NCRC in work keys did not score a full score in the CCR component of the existing accountability model. And then looking closer at this data, this chart addresses the 3 subject area assessments that we're looking at in ACT. At the top of the slide, you'll see listed out ACT English, ACT Reading, and ACT Math. And then the colored bars indicate the NCRC that the student received and what level they received. At the top of those bars is a number that corresponds to the average score on that ACT subject area assessment. And then you'll see the red line indicating the benchmark for those ACT subject area assessments. And what I want to point out here is that a silver NCRC does not equate to ACT benchmarks in reading or math, and just slightly above that in ACT English. So there was a question about where the sample of students came from in the state. So this is a slide just showing where the concentrations are of those NCRC certificates that were matched back to the 2019 graduating class and the counts for each county. So as Dr. Vanderford touched on, the task force
recommended that we use a silver level as a measure of performance for students in the CCR component, primarily because that was the level that they felt that industries were asking for in regards to hiring students, silver or higher. Based on that and feedback from the Accountability Task Force, the MDU worked with the Center for Assessment and the Technical Advisory Committee to come up with a comparable measure of performance using silver on the NCRC. And the recommendation was to use silver and to include the completion of the industry certification or career pathway. I won't go read through this slide again, as Dr. Vanderford just went through the background on this item and how it passed through the commission and through the Board of Education to get to where we are today. The MDE does stand to the recommendation that the work key silver be considered in addition to the completion of an industry certification or career pathway as the indication of student success that would be comparable in rigor to the ACT performance measures that are currently in the CCR component. So I will turn this over to Dr. Oakley at this point for him to walk us through the next section. Dr. Oakley, you are muted.
Yes. Thank you. Alan, can you, I grabbed a different window, I'm sorry.
Okay.
Are you able to advance still?
Yes, I can. Do you want me to maximize this?
You can maximize, yes, please. Okay. You can go back into max mode.
All right.
So as we look at several definitions here, these are each unique, but also relevant and connected. Career pathways that we have available are series of courses, and they're typically 4 course sequences that are all in the same field. They culminate in a student's ability to gain an industry certification or to participate in work-based learning opportunities. That's what we look at as a student moves through from concentrator to completer status through those individual pathways. For our purposes, a CTE concentrator is a student who has completed 2 of those sequential courses in the same field and is enrolled in a 3rd course in that sequence. A CTE completer has been through all 4 courses in that same career field. And then when we talk about industry certification, those are credentials that are recognized at the state or more typically at the national level by business and industry, and they illustrate a student's ability to perform work in that designated content area. And then finally, Career Academy is relatively new project that we've started or supporting in the state. They've been around for a period of time, but we've really made a concerted effort of late to see these expand. But these opportunities really look at how we can embed CTE programming within the high school setting, combining academic and CTE courses together so that those students exit high school ready for college and career. As we start to look at CTE benefits, we recognize that CTE programming is not what we called vocational education 30 or 40 years ago. There are potential benefits here for all students. We've got 16 career clusters. We'll look at those in just a moment, but these allow students to explore a broad spectrum of potential opportunities, technical and professional in nature. CTE offers hands-on learning for students to be able to apply their understanding in a real-world setting. The skills and certifications that are gained from CTE better position students to compete as they build out their portfolios and their resumes and they start to apply for jobs. We've seen consistently over recent years improved graduation rates for our CTE students as compared to students that are not in CTE programming. And finally, we know that CTE prepares students both for work, whether it's immediate employment or for further post-secondary training. So as you look at the next slide and these 16 career clusters, these are the national clusters that I mentioned just a moment ago. I would challenge you. I think you'll probably be hard pressed to think of a job or an occupation that's not encompassed in one of these career clusters. Within these clusters, there are individual CTE pathways that the students pursue in school. So if you're interested in becoming, if you're going to the health science, for instance, there would be students in there who might want to become a phlebotomist, or might want to become a nurse or a nurse practitioner or a doctor, or do something on the research side in health sciences, epidemiologist or something like that. But if you dig through each of these career clusters, there are individual pathways that are more specific to student progression. So one of the questions as we move forward, posed in January, was around how students can get into CTE programming. Board policy does allow for students in grades 9 through 12 to participate. Pathway programs typically have suggested prerequisites that are recommended. It may include some academic coursework, maybe a previous English course or math course. But these are really recommendations that are in place to improve the likelihood of student success going into this rigorous CTE content. These prerequisites are set or recommended for each curriculum. They're determined kind of by looking at Perkins requirements, as well as considering recommendations from business and industry partners, as well as teachers in the field. So as we move forward and look at some of the planning requirements for CTE, the identification of pathways for districts, what they offer in their schools, is a collaborative process. It's required by Perkins. We're in the fifth iteration of the Perkins Law. The Carl Perkins Act is the law, the federal law that governs career technical programming. So districts completed a needs assessment in January of 2020. They'll do this again a year from now in January 2022. They do this in collaboration with community colleges and post-secondary institutions, as well as with business and industry reps. And this process is used to determine both the need for new programming, as well as the need to convert existing programs that may not have a strong uptake or that may not have a great demand. But this is, again, is utilized locally and in collaboration with local partners. One of the other topics I want to talk with you a minute about this morning is the consortium model. One of the questions posed last month was around whether CTE programming was available in all districts. And to answer that, yes. There are cases where districts partner together to offer CTE programming. Districts can determine locally whether they join one of these consortia or not. This model is particularly useful to smaller and more rural districts. We currently have 17 CTE consortia in the state. They provide CTE programming to 38 districts within Mississippi. And this allows them to use and to share state federal funds for personnel and PD and equipment and instructional aid. Keep in mind, they can choose whether to participate in a consortia annually through that local application process. It was previously called the local plan update. And any district is eligible to join or to form a consortia with another district. There's not a separate requirement or criteria for that based on your size or geography. One of the other topics that we talked briefly about in January, as we talk about programming, is career academies. We think this is a promising opportunity for us as a state. It was highlighted in our Perkins plan. We currently have 12 districts you see active on the left side of the slide there that are actively implementing career academies. We have another 4 that are developing their plans, and then another 5 that we know are presently exploring. And that number changes by the week or by the month as more districts are considering this. Our goal is to have 40 districts either active developing or exploring by the 2022-2023 school year. We do have some reserve Perkins funds set aside to support with planning and implementation, but it's worth noting there's not additional approval required for districts to operate a career academy beyond just the planning and setting up that project and running with it. There are a number of benefits to career academies. It allows more students to participate. When you've got it there on campus, you don't have to worry about transporting students back and forth to the CTE center and potential loss of instructional time due to travel. There's greater relevance and connection between the academic classes and the career classes that are being offered. You'll see opportunities for students, maybe in that health sciences program, again, as I mentioned earlier, studying health sciences, and they're taking anatomy and physiology at the same time, or a biology class at the same time. and they're bouncing back and forth from class to class, and some of the content is the same, and the teachers are able to co-teach, and concepts are able to transfer back and forth. We see tremendous benefit here, though, as these students move through these opportunities to connect academics and CTE and to explore certifications and work-based learning at the same time. So let's spend a minute talking about funding. We have roughly $84 million in state and federal funds combined that support CTE programming in the state, both for secondary and post-secondary. You'll note that the majority of this funding, about 85% of it, the 50% on the right, a large portion of the secondary state funding and the post-secondary funding go to pay for teacher units, both at the high school and the post-secondary community college level. There's really only a small amount that's left at the state level for support through grants, through program oversight, through curriculum development, and other supports. Funding is allocated, both at the federal dollars and state dollars are allocated to this. Federal dollars are allocated based on census data as well as a count of economically disadvantaged students, K-12, in each district. And then state funds are allocated out as reimbursement for CTE personnel. And it's based on the number of teaching units they have, class of license, and years of experience that are in those programs right now. So in your backup material, there's a spreadsheet there where we've gone in and pulled by district a good bit of information that we thought would be helpful to address the question around opportunities for students to take CTE courses. So we've just screenshotted several here for reference. You've got this full breakdown in your backup. But this, the districts noted on the left, obviously, the majority of the students that are CTE concentrators are typically in 11th grade. So that second column where it says grade 11 enrollment, the only reason we pulled that number is because that's where most of our students who are CTE concentrators, they're typically in 11th grade. So there's nothing magic about that, but it does give you a sense of the concentrator count compared to the overall 11th grade enrollment. You will see instances where there may be a larger number of concentrators than there are 11th graders because you've got students who are 10th graders or 12th graders included in that concentrator count, but it's just kind of a baseline reference for your information. Additionally, the spreadsheet includes pathway enrollment in that next column over. You can see South Panola, for example, operates a CTE center. They serve 307 students. You can see it in the gray bar midway down your screen. Given the number of seats in each pathway that you can see one column to the right, the district could serve as many as 525 students in their existing programs. So you can see their current enrollment, their max enrollment based on the number of sections they offer, and percent of capacity there. As we move down the page, and we look at Bay Waveland School District, you'll note that Bay Waveland has 31 students in a digital media program. But then as you look to the right, you also note they're in a consortia with Hancock County. And so they have access not only to that digital media program, but also to all of the programming listed immediately below that Hancock County offers. And so again, there's additional capacity within the programs to serve students. Currently, South Panola is at 58% of capacity. Hancock County is at 43% of capacity. So we see a lot of opportunities within the existing programming for more students to connect to CTE. If we can move to the next slide, please, Alan. Also in your backup, we provided funding distributions by district. The funds are primarily used to pay for teacher units. You'll note that both state and federal funding is included in the chart. And as a matter of reference, consortia lead districts receive the federal funds for other member districts. And so you'll see in some cases an NA noted in that right-hand column. The consortium member districts still get their state funds for the non-pathway CTE programs. There are a number of programs like Family Consumer Science, Cyber Foundations. Those programs are not in the consortia agreements, but just as a matter of reference, those funds for state and federal are out there and typically used to support staffing in those programs. If we can look at enrollment numbers for just a minute. We currently have just over 10,000 students statewide that are CTE concentrators. That's up from about 7,400 students just 5 years ago. We're seeing those numbers climb each year. And then that's a segment of the overall pathway participants we have in the state of roughly 28, almost 29,000. And then finally, on the data front, with regard to enrollment, that 29,000 on the right, 28,886 is the seats utilized, and then capacity statewide within our current model to serve almost twice that many students, 51, almost 52,000 students, based on sections available right now. So access, obviously all of our students have access district to district. We've got 831 pathway programs right now across our districts. We're utilizing 56% statewide of the available seats. And I do want to note that while additional funding would be needed to add new programs, that seats are available in existing pathways for students that may be interested. And then I want to speak just very candidly for a minute as we view the CTE programming as an agency, right? We look at this programming really as a key aspect of college and career readiness. We don't simply want our students to graduate from high school. We want them to graduate ready for that next step. And we don't view work keys alone as a predictor. Let me back up. We view work keys really as a predictor of success in the world of work, but the work keys in and of itself doesn't address the skills that those students need when they graduate to go to work. It's worth noting that when we consider the options right now that students have in lieu of passing a state assessment to graduate, there are some pairings in place. A student can take the ASVAB and get a certain score plus CPAS or industry certification, or they can take the work keys plus CPAS or industry certification as one of the options to meet graduation requirements if they don't have that passing score on the statewide MAP exam. So using work keys alone as a measure of CCR or college career readiness would be disconnected from that existing requirement, and it would potentially result in students who earn points in the CCR component without meeting similarly paired requirements as an option to graduate. Additionally, frankly, I have concerns that if we look at this work keys as a standalone rather than in conjunction with the CTE completion, we run the risk of CTE programs shifting their focus to only prepare students to take the work keys rather than really offering the CTE content that these students need and desire and deserve. Department leadership strongly believes that the recommendation coming forward is student focused, that what gets measured gets done, and that if we hold students and districts up to this standard, they will rise to meet it. And our students will be better positioned when they graduate for that next step. So Alan, I will turn this back over to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Oakley. Yes, so in summing up here, we want to look at the recommendation from the department and talk a little bit about implications. So the recommendation from the department is that in order to earn a comparable credit to ACT performance on the CCR indicator, that work key silver be required in addition to the completion of an industry certification or career pathway. Dr. Oakley has discussed several of the concerns on the secondary side of things in regards to CTE programming and the effect this would have on CTE program. I want to also address some concerns in regards to accountability. Most importantly, I would like to say that the department is in support of enhancing CTE measures in the accountability system. This is something that we see of value to students. However, we are strongly concerned about just looking at work keys in this inclusion of this measure in the CCR component. As I've touched on in the data that we've looked at in regards to the CCR component as it exists currently in relation to the NCRC of silver, a silver alone is the indicator of student success in college and career readiness is not equivalent to current measures of student performance on the ACT. And using a silver as a standalone measure of student performance in the CCR component of accountability would effectively replace the ACT rather than complement the ACT as a measure of student performance. Currently, the state funds ACT for all juniors. There would likely be a shift away from an emphasis on ACT and to more so to ACT work keys because it is an easier measure of student success and would effectively lower the bar for student performance in college and career readiness. We have concerns about that effect on the model and on the CCR component of the model, to the effect that we think that it would require resetting of cuts, resetting of standards, and we would see a significant shift away from emphasis on the ACT and simply to ACT work keys. We also have concerns about the fact that it would potentially require, again, another test for students that may not necessarily benefit students. So many concerns here that we want to communicate as a department when you consider this decision. The rationale for our recommendation, the silver NCRC is not a standalone indicator, is not equivalent measure of student performance. And we also feel, as Dr. Oakley stated, including a career pathway or industry certification in the measure of success gives greater assurance that students are indeed in a career readiness pathway and that they graduate prepared for a career rather than just having the NCRC silver. Do you have any questions for us?
Questions from the board?
Dear Glenn A. Scupport, I do have a couple. Alan, talk me through the comment that the shift, if silver were a standalone, how would that affect ACT participation in scores in that category, the college and credits category?
Well, just looking at the data, we can see that achieving a silver NCRC is not as rigorous as meeting the benchmarks on ACT that are currently established in the CCR component. So it is, in my opinion, a factual statement to say that this would effectively lower the bar. That being said, ACT is funded for all students, all juniors, and is a required assessment and is included in participation measures. So I would anticipate that students would still take the ACT. However, we would see a significant shift towards giving ACT work keys assessments to all students in order to achieve additional accountability points in college and career readiness. And we have concerns that that focus on achieving accountability points would effectively shift the focus away from what's best for students to what's best for measures and accountability and for administrators in schools and districts.
So that would mean you, on the college and career readiness, right now you're half a point in each area, math and then English and language arts. You'd have to change that pretty significantly to actually lower the standard, right?
The way that this policy change is written, it would give a student who achieves the established standard on ACT work keys a full point in college and career readiness. There's no half point in this alternative measure of student performance like there is for ACT. And what's also important to note is that students right now have the ability to earn either a half a point or a full point in CCR based on their performance in ACT, but students that do not meet either of those benchmarks in ACT do not earn any points for college and career readiness. If using the silver alone as a measure of indicator of student success, we saw, as we saw in our data earlier, that would include many more students as achieving a 1 point in the CCR component that currently do not receive any points in college and career readiness because of their performance on ACT.
So in going the other direction, if silver is not the benchmark, would gold and platinum be a higher common ground for consensus? Is gold and platinum allowed to stand alone, you think, in the data?
There would be a better argument that would be more comparable based on the data that we've seen. But also, as Dr. Oakley stated, we want want to have a measure of performance in accountability that considers other opportunities for students other than just ACT work keys, and that is the career pathways, the career concentrator, those programs that exist that currently are not considered in accountability. We want to incorporate those into accountability to encourage participation in those programs and to have outcomes for students that to the extent that they graduate from high school, not only with a test score, but with a credential.
And again, I'm sorry I'm asking questions, but I think Paula's point at the very beginning is this is a 50-50 issue in our state. I think that was a very accurate statement. I think that's what the APA process told us, and that's why I'm asking these questions. So tell me, how soon are we going to have to redo the accountability model to include the career pathways piece? What timeline are we looking at for doing that going into the future? If I understood what you just said properly.
Well, so we do not anticipate calculating a composite score for accountability or reporting a summative rating based on this year's performance. So we would be looking at inclusion of this as an indicator and measure of accountability next year.
Next year is in 21, 22, is that what you're saying?
Yes, sir.
So we're going to have to look at this accountability model pretty much totally going into 21, 22?
Well, in regards to, what do you mean when you say look at?
What I'm saying is I'm looking today at this 50-50 issue we have in the state, and I'm looking at the fact that silver is on the reading benchmark or whatever you want to call it, but we didn't, in my mind, explore the higher common ground of could gold and platinum stand alone. And I'm just trying to figure out why that doesn't help us. I mean, at this point, I'm trying to justify why we need to make this change because I do think that the work keys concept benefits children in our state, especially those that are going to walk across the stage and possibly move into careers, jobs that are hands-on and they can raise their families and so on and so forth in our state. So I'm seeing that piece. But the whole issue here is the accountability model. What's good for the kids is to allow this test and for us to move forward. So what I'm trying to figure out is if we're going to change this model, the discussion we're having today, are we going to be looking at this same discussion in the fall as we look at changing accountability to accept other things in?
Well, isn't that always a question? You know, I think we have committed as an agency to constantly review and make adjustments to accountability as we can, and to the extent that it doesn't cause large disruptions in the accountability system. And I think that's the goal here, is to try to incorporate ACT work keys in a way that is not very disruptive to the model, but yet captures some value that's being provided to students that's not currently included. And I believe the agency's intent here is to try to create a richer, better view of CTE programs, as well as this test, work keys, that's a part of CTE programs into the accountability system. And again, to make it a comparable measure to the existing ACT benchmarks that are in CCR. We want to have an equivalent weighting to the accountability score as ACT, but we want to do that in such a way where we have an equivalent measure of rigor or a view of student performance to do that.
Okay, other questions or comments?
Alan, I do want to address one thing. Alan, do you want, or somebody, Nathan, whomever, that work, currently ACT is paid for by the legislature for all 11th graders. And funding for work keys currently is in a line item that we're not sure yet is going to be re-added. So I just want the board to consider also that funding could be an issue for work keys, depending on whether districts are going to pick that up or whether parents are going to pick that up, because currently it is not funded for all children.
It's correct, Dr. Wright. There's a $1 million line item that the board approved a methodology probably 15, 18 months ago now for reimbursement of costs for work keys, AP, industry certifications, IB courses, dual credit courses. The board prioritized work keys as the top line. This is what you do first, districts, as you process this and claim reimbursement. So we prioritized with our CTE students first, and then making it available to other students who wanted to take it.
And we did that methodology based on an average of current CTE people. So if we had more people taking work keys, we may not have sufficient funds, is my question.
It's based on student enrollment. So it was based on because that money was used for different programs, it's based on high school.
Right, but would children have to be enrolled in a CTE program in order to take work keys alone?
No, they would not.
That was my point.
I'm sorry, they would not. That would be another option for districts to use it beyond the CTE students.
Okay, other comments or questions?
I have a question. And I'm Angela Bass from Jackson. I am just trying to, I guess, sort of understand the data about accessibility to the districts. I looked through it before. It's just not consistent with just what I've been hearing from some folks in the district. So can you talk me through like why there might be a perception that districts don't have adequate access to CTE programs? Would it be like affected by transportation or are there any types of barriers to access to the programs? Because just based on conversations I've had, I just think that there's a perception that, we don't have access to the same CTE programs that another district might have access to, or we don't have access to any CTE programs. Why might a district say that?
Yeah, I can't tell you why a district would say we don't have access to any CTE programs. We've actually met recently with the communications team about trying to better message the opportunities through CTE. One of the things that came out of the Perkins plan was messaging around CTE programming. And so for a district to say we don't have access to any CTE programs is not accurate. Now, does access vary? Well, you can look at the slide that I showed you. You will see that there are some districts that do have more programs than others. Well, there are districts right now that have more secondary classes than others. We have a minimum expected course offering in a high school, but there are schools that offer additional electives beyond that core minimum. We have opportunities, though, right now, when you look at the access that's available, when you look at the number of sections, the allowable seats per section in the existing programs, there's space there to serve additional students. The other thing worth considering is that while transportation can pose an issue, there may be opportunities as well to consider through that consortium model or through the Career Academy model or through virtual programming, additional solutions to try to make this better. In some cases, the district, the counselor may not be working closely enough with the CTE to be able to know what those opportunities are, to message those to students, to message those to families. A lot of that work happens right now by board policy, by accountability or accreditation standards in middle grades with those individual success plans. All of this is in play as we try to message the value of CTE programming, the importance of it, and potential access to it.
Okay. And so I'm hearing that they get some supports on, like they will continue to get supports on how this all rolls out and is implemented. And the other concern that's been raised a lot that I've heard is around, I guess, perceptions around tracking students into certain pathways, and if there will be a monitoring around, student demographics of who's going into what track.
So we do look at our data year to year. There's a small set aside within Perkins to try to recruit students into non-traditional fields. So maybe it's young ladies to pursue a pathway into automotive or construction where they might not typically go. We've been very deliberate as an agency in trying to avoid that concept of tracking. And I said to you earlier, CTE is not what it was years ago, where vocational ed was for those children. Right? We have tried to avoid that mindset entirely, because there are students with all kinds of capacity to do incredible work that may pursue a CTE pathway, graduate from high school, and may want to work construction or may want to work automotive, and then they decide, you know what, I want to open my own shop. I want to go back and I want to run my own construction business. Our goal is not to push them that they have to take that next step, but our goal is to make sure they've got both the skills through the CTE programming and the potential through their high school diploma that they can take that next step and move forward regardless of their zip code, regardless of their poverty level, regardless of their demographic, regardless of any of those factors, that they are positioned for success going forward.
Okay.
I have a question for Dr. Vanderford.
Yes, sir.
The original recommendation from the Accountability Task Force locally, what was that? Please remind me what they recommended.
Well, they were presented with several different proposals. I mean, they pretty much all along wanted to consider the work keys as a standalone, but they have been working on this component or inclusion in this component since March of 2020. So we've gathered data and presented data, impact data that we received from ACT all throughout, and early on indicated or recognized that this could potentially be an issue if they did approve it as a standalone. So at the last meeting, we presented the Accountability Task Force with several different options, one of which is the recommendation that the agency is making now. To Mr. East's point that he made earlier, the Accountability Task Force did consider the gold as a more equivalent, or we presented the gold as a more equivalent standard to the ACT, but the Accountability Task Force did not make that recommendation either. So their recommendation, to answer your question, Dr. McGehee, is the work keys as a standalone. But the agency, through consultation with our technical advisory committee that met following the Accountability Task Force recommendation, was modified based on their recommendation. So that's our process. The Accountability Task Force is an advisory group that's responsible for making recommendations that we may accept, reject, or modify based on consultation with our national experts. And that's what we did, as we do with all other policy decisions that involve assessment and accountability. We take through that group.
I understand. And so the Accountability Task Force are our local practitioners, correct?
Yes, that group is made up of that. And so the commission, we modified the recommendation prior to going to the Commission on School Accreditation, and they unanimously approved us moving it forward to the state board to add the work keys in conjunction with the silver on the work keys in conjunction with the career pathway or an industry certification. And that group has a majority of practitioners on it as well, but by statute is required to have business, lay people and people from the business industry. And they approved unanimously the recommendation that we're making to the state board.
Dr. Dean, may I say something, please?
Please do.
I served on that Accountability Task Force, and the group was in agreement with the silver score, but where the difficulty came in was they never could agree on how it was to be incorporated into the accountability model, or exactly what weight it would carry. When we got into all that discussion, things got really murky because every district brought a different attitude about it, or a different idea as to how it should be incorporated and what else should be included with it. So in the end, because we had been discussing it for over a year and it spent hours and hours, and quite frankly, I don't think we've spent as much time on anything else in the time I've been on this board as we have on this work keys. They finally just said, well, let's do silver and move on. And that's how it ended. Although I am aware that there's been a lot of discussion about it in the legislature. And my concern, I'm willing to go, I'll go along with whatever the board decides to do, but I don't want to see us provide an opportunity to lower the standard on something. I think when our students graduate, we need to know that they have accomplished something and that they are able and capable of moving on into college or going into a career if that's what they choose to do. And these classes are very, well, you all know, they're very technical now. I was just looking at the data here, and I thought this was kind of interesting. In Jackson Public Schools, they've got 180% of their students in early childhood classes, which I think that's an interesting thing to me, that people are that interested in that. But as you look through the data, it's just up in Holmes County, they have any number of students in agriculture. So it kind of tracks what's important in that area. But my whole point is, I think the recommendation of silver came out because the group just couldn't ever figure out how else to go, and we needed to move on. So that's it. Dr. Dean.
One thing that I want to add to the conversation, and I'll bring Pete in here in a minute, but I'm hesitant to have the legislature hang over our heads in terms of what their plans are. But I think it's really important. From my point of view, the philosophy of being a board member is you've got to be able to sometimes give the political landscape arm's length. Keep it at arm's length from the work of education and educators. However, I think we also got to be practical and observe the realities of what's going on, which specifically are right now a bill that was passed in both houses last year and sent to the governor is back active. It passed the House. It sits with the Senate now. And I'll ask Pete here in a second to tell us about the process and the timeline for that. But let me just say, what I've read the bill, and what's in the bill is doing what we're trying to consider right now. Except for they're doing it ACT Silver only without the industry recognized certification in career pathways. So that's to be considered because it's actively being debated. I don't really know, where the Senate will be. And again, Pete will tell us about that. But what I don't like is, without question, and I've said this to every legislator I could, we do not need the precedent to be set that the Mississippi legislature can mold the accountability model, because I think once that's done, then it can be done again and again. And that's our responsibility. They are sending a signal that this is important, career and technical ed. And if people choose to go this route, that's what they want. So it's just, to say it's subsuming the ACT. Well, the ACT is a requirement by law. And if people want to do this, that's exactly what they're trying to achieve. So I'll just ask Pete if you can give us kind of the strategic update as you see it on the Senate side and where you think this might be headed.
Thanks, Dr. Dean. So, Tuesday is a deadline for bills to be passed out of the opposite chamber. So deadline is looming upon us. The bill, we had a meeting with Chairman Bell and others and the speaker regarding this bill, and got it to where we all could live with it. And basically, it's basically codifying some policies the board is already doing. There is some language in there that talks about the ACT work keys. And it's my estimation that once the board takes some action on that language could possibly go out, because I don't know that the folks on the Senate side want to actually name a vendor in the bill. I would say that during the meeting with Chairman Bell, Nathan and I talked to him about the additional supports around ACT work keys along with Silver with a pathway or a certification, and he was pretty good with that. He thought that was okay, because Nathan did explain to him that yes, it's not just score Silver, but we want to make sure that these students have a great foundation moving forward. So he was okay with that. But then, as to answer your question, Jason, so yeah, we'll know by Tuesday if the Senate plans to keep it intact like it is, or if they plan to make some changes to it as well, and then send it back to House for concurrence or not.
Pete, may I ask a question? In the course of the discussion, because we certainly don't want to put an added burden on to districts, was there any discussion about funding above and beyond the $1 million that they already give for testing? Or, well, I mean, if we suddenly have a big surge in kids taking work keys, is there funding for that?
Well, I know that Chairman Bell, and I think Dr. McGee was in this same meeting that we were in. Chairman Bell said that he is working hard on to get adequate funding for the ACT work keys. It's still early on in the appropriations process, however, but he did say that he is working to, he and others are working to funding for this.
And that's the same meeting the speaker was in, and the speaker affirmed what Chairman Bell was saying, and they said that they would put additional money in that line item. So it's a little more weight than just the chairman. Other questions or comments?
One more comment, Dr. Dean. I'm well aware of the importance of the accountability model. At the same time, Mr. Burrow, as we go forward, since we're in a changing environment, resetting of scores is probably going to be on the windshield for sure as we get into 21, 22. Is that correct?
I'm not sure if the question is directed at me, but I don't observe it as closely as, Alan and Paula and Nathan, but I don't see how we can't have another look at where the accountability model stands after the not taking the test last year and the waivers this year, in the spring of 2022. What's the impact going to be? What are the consequences? So at a minimum, I would think that the board would want to look at it.
Chairman, I'm going to muddy the waters a little bit, trying to reach the highest common ground. And Rosemary, I appreciate your background knowledge on the Silver. I was unaware of that conversation until today, so thank you very much for that. Is there any way that we can draft this to simply say that Silver with the CTE classes is one way of doing it, but Gold and Platinum stand alone? What does that do to us in the big picture? Because the Gold and Platinum, based on Alan, I think his data was that we're meeting that ACT standard. So those kids that are in your career pathways, those kids that are in a high school situation that don't have as much access as Ms. Bass's question is, can still go make that Gold and Platinum, and it could be a standalone, but the Silver can be tied to the CTE class. Is that a common ground we could agree on and move toward? This is all about the accountability model and making sure we don't hurt school districts, but more importantly, it's about children. And if we can get them to a good job in welding and electricity and electrician, that's the certification piece. So is that a good common ground to meet here today and move forward? And I'm going to be quiet now.
Mr. East, if I could speak to that from our national experts, from their recommendation, they certainly support the Gold and Platinum as a standalone. If that is the vote of the board today, that would significantly change the APA, the recommendation that we made. So all it would force us to do is to send that back out in APA again. Am I correct, Attorney Meyer? We would just vote today to amend that and then resubmit it for APA comment and then bring it back to board for final approval.
Ladies and gentlemen, I think that's the solution. That awards children who, they may not be in CTE, but can still make that gold and platinum. That awards those school districts, if you will, for having a career pathway or classes that help them get there. And then the silver being below the ACT standard, it also allows them to take that CT, and so everybody is a winner in the end of the day, is what I'm saying. That's the highest common ground to me.
Let me just ask one point of clarification. I'm following what you're saying, but the points would all be in the college and career readiness category. There was at one point we had talked about splitting it and having some in acceleration and some others in the, but if we put it all, like you're saying, platinum or gold or silver plus the classes, all in college and career readiness, like I said, I think that's, like you said, I think that's probably the happy compromise.
And again, I'm not the brains behind that, Alan and Nathan, and how that works, but to me that makes sense, y'all. That's like rewarding these kids that make the 28 or 29 with scholarships on the ACT. You're really giving that pathway. So I think that's the highest common ground.
Any comments before I move this to a motion?
One last comment. I would say too, accessibility is important to all of our students, and give these guys an opportunity to take work keys early on where it's available. As we all know, our counterparts to the east in Alabama, way that provide every senior to take work keys. I know Arkansas is working on it. So anything that we can do to open up accessibility for our young people to walk out of secondary or post-secondary position would be great.
Other comments? Okay.
Well, I don't want to belabor this because I'm telling you, this is like birthing an elephant. It's never going to end. But, you know, I think Dr. McGee makes a good point. We have to, school districts have got to realize that this is important. And as I said last month, teaching is going to change. So there are opportunities out there through consortiums and through virtual teaching and all kinds of things for them to step up their game. And if it's important in the legislature, as it appears to be, and with industry, then we've got to step up the funding. And so I think we've spent enough time and been able to get the message out there that obviously career pathways and technical training is important, and our state needs these people. So I think Mr. East compromise is a good one, and if we can work that through, then I'm supportive.
So let me just kind of state the motion, and then we could have someone make that motion, second, and additional discussion so that we can move on here. But the motion would actually be to go back out for APA for the revision as follows, to change the accountability model to include ACT work keys, gold or platinum, or ACT work key silver plus industry recognized certification or career pathway, all in the college and career readiness portion of the accountability model. And so that's the motion. So again, this isn't to include it. This is because it's substantively changing the original APA request. We need to go back out. We'll ask for expedited, maybe vote on this in the March or April meeting. But that's the motion. If somebody makes that in a second, then I can ask for discussion.
It's your baby, Mr. East. Go.
Don't let me birth it, huh? I move that we ask the department to go back to APA with the understanding that we would like to see gold and platinum as a standalone, that silver plus classes be another opportunity for kids. I'm not wording this right, so everybody who does the motions at the end of the day, make it work for us. And that be included in the college and career portion of our accountability model.
Okay, is there a second?
I second it. Rosemary Altman.
Okay, any additional discussion on the motion? All right, hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, motion carries. All right, Dr. Vanford, we'll move on to the second action item, approval of the state board to suspend strict compliance with specific state statutes.
So, Dr. Dean, for the sake of time, items 2 and 3, if you recall, as we move forward with suspending strict compliance with state statutes, state board policies, or our manuals, we have separated them into 2 parts. One that is state statute that is associated with items that are outlined in our Mississippi statewide accountability document, and that is our accountability standards. So that is item 3 and that Dr. Oakley will address. And item 2 are those items that are specific to the K-12 licensure guidelines. So Dr. Murphy will walk us through the recommendations for rule suspensions or waivers or extensions with the licensure guidelines in item 2. And Dr. Oakley will walk us through the same that's related to the Mississippi statewide accountability standards.
Thank you, Dr. Vanderford, and good morning to all. Item 2A represents a request for a 1-year extension to all MDE issued licenses scheduled to expire on June 30th, 2021. And particularly, the Division of Educator Licensure is requesting approval to suspend licensure requirements, renewal requirements for those licenses scheduled to expire on June 30, 2021, and grant a 1-year extension for those licenses that are scheduled to expire on that date. And so if approved, the licenses will reflect a new expiration date of June 30th, 2022. License holders will have this time to engage in professional learning opportunities for the purpose of meeting respective criteria for maintaining, converting, or obtaining the standard Mississippi license, depending on the license type they hold. And this will apply again to the license types bearing the 6/30/2021 expiration date, which includes teacher licenses, administrator, instructional support personnel, and local district requested licenses. There will be no required application submission for obtaining the extension, as all these licenses will be extended automatically by our ELMS system developer upon approval.
Okay. Questions, comments?
Motion to accept, Mr. Chairman. Is
there a second?
Second. Karen Elam.
Motion and second. Any additional discussion? Here none. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, motion carries.
All right, so item 2B represents a request that would address certain prospective and practicing local superintendents of schools who would fall in one of 2 categories. One would be principals aspiring to serve as superintendent of education, and 2, practicing superintendents who currently hold the initial 3-year alternative district superintendent license. And so with regards to the aspiring superintendents, Mississippi Code annotated 37-913, particularly subsection 1, requires that all aspiring superintendents of school shall hold proper valid administrative license, and 2, they must have at minimum 6 years of experience. That could be classroom or administrative experience, but at least 3 years of administrative experience as a principal in a school with an A or B accountability rating, or they have to have served in a school where they increased the accountability rating by 1 letter grade during the time that they served as principal in that school, or they have to have met comparable accountability requirements in another state. And so, as you know, the MDE was not able to administer any of the required state or federal assessments. Therefore, the MDE did not have sufficient data to produce accountability determinations. And so this does not allow those aspiring principals, those principals who aspire to be superintendents of schools in Mississippi to meet the accountability rating criterion that's outlined in the law. And so our ask today is, absent accountability results, that we're requesting approval to temporarily allow those prospective Mississippi superintendents of education meeting all other criteria to be deemed eligible to receive the initial district superintendent license by way of the State Board of Education's approved alternative qualifications prospective district superintendent of education through that policy. Furthermore, for the candidates who actually hold, or the practicing superintendents who currently hold the initial 3-year alternative district license, there's one criterion that requires them to have increased the district's accountability rating by at least a letter grade during the time that they actually hold that initial 3-year license. And for the same reason, they're not able to meet that particular criterion. And so we're asking that at the point at which that 3-year license expires, if the district in which they're serving so chooses to reappoint that individual and request an extension, that we grant a 1-year extension at that particular time.
Okay. Comments, questions? Okay, is there a motion?
I'll make a motion. Ronnie McGehee, Madison.
I got a motion and Dr. Elam with the second. Any additional discussion? Hear none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, motion carries.
Thank you, sir. Item 2C represents a request for a 1-month extension to allow individuals that recently completed the National Board Certification process time for submission of required documentation to be eligible for a prorated salary supplement. The National Board for Professional Teaching Standards organization, like all other organizations across the nation, experienced an unexpected interruption in their then normal processes and protocols for collecting and evaluating documents and artifacts submitted by those aspiring prospective National Board certified teachers. And so without saying, the interruption was caused by the shutdown of COVID, and it affected one deadline that's in our state law, a deadline of February 15th, which candidates had that time frame to submit the appropriate documentation in order to be deemed eligible for a prorated salary supplement. And so our request today is for a 1-month extension to allow those qualifying candidates until March 15, 2021 to submit the required National Board documentation for the purpose of being deemed eligible for a prorated salary supplement as outlined in law.
Okay, is there a motion?
So moved, Karen Elam.
Second. Angela.
Second from Dr. Bass, okay. Any additional discussion? Hear none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, motion carries. All right, Dr. Renford and Oakley. Dr. Oakley.
Thank you, Dr. Dean. So item 3, we've got several pieces here. I'll walk through them one at a time. Item 3A is related to the 3rd grade reading exam, the 3rd grade MAP exam for Literacy-Based Promotion Act. We're requesting suspension of the reporting requirements for the statewide assessment and retention information as required by the Literacy-Based Promotion Act. There would not be a report generated in the fall, given where we've been over the last year with instruction. Districts, however, would still be required to document interventions and supports for students, as well as ensure that they made that ongoing communication effort with parents if this waiver to be approved.
Okay. Is there a motion?
I'll make the motion. Ronnie McGehee, Madison.
Okay. There's a second.
Second it, Altman and Clinton.
Okay, there's a motion and a second. Any additional discussion? Hear none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? All right, motion carries.
In item 3B, we're bringing forward a request for a waiver around the effectiveness evaluation plan for our early learning collaboratives. Programs would continue to conduct the assessments, the K readiness assessment, the Brigant screener, but not the class observation that requires an external observer to be in and out of the classroom multiple times over the course of the year. Grantees would remain eligible for funding going to the upcoming school year. We also would be requesting a 1-year suspension of the instructional time requirement and the student membership requirement for the reimbursement of the collaboratives for this school year.
Okay, just go ahead and go through, I'll ask if there's any questions on that, but just go through C, D, and E, and we'll stop and ask questions, and we'll just approve all at the end.
Works for me, thank you. In item 3C, we're requesting a 1-year suspension of the cursive writing assessment requirements. That's in state law, was passed several years ago. We're requesting a waiver of that requirement for this year.
Okay, any questions? Okay, D.
In item 3D, this relates to the Nate Rogers Speech Language Therapy Scholarship for students that have speech language impairment. We're requesting a 1-year suspension of the requirement that students remain in continued attendance at a physical school location for this school year. We've got students that are receiving scholarships that may have floated in and out of face-to-face, hybrid, and virtual, and so we're requesting flex on that requirement they be in a physical location.
Okay, makes sense. Other questions, comments? Hear none, keep going.
And then item 3E, same kind of request for students on the Dyslexia Therapy Scholarship, just a request that we allow some flexibility around the presence at a physical location for the current year.
Okay. Comments, questions? Okay, under the offices of Chief Accountability Officer and Chief Academic Officer, do I have a motion to approve items 3B, C, D, and E?
I just had to recuse myself from item 3B. So I just want the record to show.
Okay. Then we'll take it like this. We'll do a motion for 3B, C, and E, and then I'll come back on D. So motion for approval on 3B, C, and E.
It's B.
Glen East.
Okay. It's 3B.
Second.
I have to recuse myself from, just for clarification.
B is in beta.
B is in beta, yeah.
Okay.
Sorry.
Start over. The motion is for 3C, Charlie, D, Delta, E, Echo, C, D, E. Motion to approve.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All right.
Karen
Any
Elam.
additional discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Now we'll separate out 3B as in beta. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Motion with the second from Ms. Altman. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Let the record reflect Dr. Bass has recused herself on this vote. All right, we'll move on to 5, and I believe Dr. Gavin has given this honor to you, Dr. Oakley. Approval of MDE grant awards.
Yes, let me pull it back up. So we're bringing forward a request for, on item 5, a grant for a K-8 STEM initiative. This is a legislatively designated segment of our CTE funds. And you can see the grant there in your backup, going out in the amount of $440,000 to the 7 districts noted there.
Okay. Comments or questions on that? Is there a motion?
I move for approval, Altman.
Second.
Okay.
Elam.
Any additional discussion? Hear none. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Motion carries. I'm trying to catch up here. I think that was the only one, Nathan.
Yes, sir. That is
Okay.
that's the only grant we've got.
Okay. So now we'll move to our consent agenda. All items are action items which require a vote unless otherwise noted. Is there a motion under the consent agenda to approve items A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, J, K, and L?
I move for approval, Altman.
And I got a second from Mr. East. Any discussion on any of the consent agenda? Hear none. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Great. And Aaron, I believe we do not have an executive session. Is that correct? Correct. Okay. So we do not need to pause the live stream or go into executive session. The only other bit of business we need to see if there's any report on any meetings attended. I don't think that was the case this last month. We do need to formally change the date of our next board meeting. Was previously scheduled for Thursday, March 18th. It's been requested to change to Thursday, March 11th at 10 a.m. Is there a motion to change that date 1 week earlier?
So moved, Elam.
Dr. Elam, is there a second?
Second, McGee.
Dr. McGee, here's second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, we've officially changed the meeting. The March board meeting will be held on March 11th, 2021 at Central High School Building starting at 10 a.m. Great work, y'all.
Face to face.
I'll be around. This is, not goodbye. Just see you in a different capacity. With that, is there a motion to adjourn?
Hang on.
May I say something first?
I've heard say, let's hang on. Just give us 2 minutes. And I'll bow to my vice chair first. You go first and I'll go second.
Well, we're probably going to say the same thing, but I want to thank Dr. Dean for his work. for those who are on the board, no, but those who may be watching the live stream don't necessarily know the hours that he's put into this. When he took over his chair, he didn't know he was going to be dealing with things of a national magnitude, but the pandemic put a whole different spin on everything. And he has done a great job and has spent so many hours to the point that I asked him one day about his job. I was worried that, as he calls it, his food and shelter job was going to, that board business was going to overtake that. But we thank him. He's a creative guy. He's passionate about things. He understands the process. And I don't think we could have had anybody in that position that could have been more helpful, who could have done the job any better. And I think he's cemented his legacy with the department and with his service. So thank you, Dr. Dean. And we look forward to you continuing to be part. And we just look for you to pull up in a Brinks truck, bringing us all the money that you're going to get out there and raise. So thanks for you. Huh?
That's the plan.
We'll be waiting.
Well, I just want to say absolutely ditto to everything that Rosemary said. So Rosemary, yes, we were thinking along the same lines. And Jason, I just want you to know how much I've appreciated your leadership and your availability and your being a good thought partner. And it's been an honor to serve with you. And I can't say enough about what you brought to the board and your passion for children and making sure that our state keeps advancing in all areas. And so I wish you absolutely nothing but the best. I know this is not going to be the last time we see you, but I just couldn't let this moment pass without really thanking you so much for your leadership and the time and attention that you have given to me and to the department. So thank you so much.
Thank you for saying that. It's not felt like any kind of work. It's felt like, a mission and a passion. I think people know I've got 3 kids in school, in public school in Mississippi. So, I've been living it through them. And again, this is certainly not, goodbye. I think there's going to be some interesting opportunities in the future to continue, working to move that needle of progress. We've been, dealt a pretty tough blow with COVID and there's a lot of work to be done, but I'm looking forward to rolling up my sleeves and taking on that next challenge in partnership, just in a different capacity. So thank you for those kind words, y'all. Okay. And a motion to adjourn from someone.
I so moved. We adjourn the meeting.
Right. There's a second from
Second.
Okay. Any discussion? Hear none. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Motion carries. Thanks, y'all. We are adjourned.